Hitting record.
I'm also recording.
All right, I'm going to clap. And then I'm going to say 1, you're going to say 2. I'm going to say 3, you're going to say 4. We're going to count to 10. 1,
2,
3,
4,
5,
6,
7,
8,
9.
10.
All right, hopefully, Marshall, that worked. What we were doing is because we know that there's been problems with the audio from your side being recorded that's had like some amount of reverb, we are now recording the podcast. Ben is also recording it, and I'm recording it separately, so maybe that audio will work. Sorry, patrons, that your audio is going to be, at least on the video version, going to be the non-combined. Might have that weird little pitter-patter, but you get it early, and you get extra content, so that's great. Speaking of which, we have a question for you, patrons. We'll make sure to continue to include some amount of bonus content every week, and make sure you get this early. But we're now recording about 30 minutes. Like originally we were going to be like 10 minutes at the beginning of every episode, and that became 15, and now it's 30, and now we're recording an entire second podcast every week. That's just like a movie podcast that me and Ben realized that we might want to just like record and release to the world separately as its own thing. And would you guys be interested? I know you're all very supportive, and maybe that's something that you would like to see, just more people to get that kind of content from us. And we just don't want to, I don't know if we'll always do that much long content, even if we were to continue making it patron exclusive, but it's something that I wanted to talk to you all about. And with that being in mind, that we'd still make sure there's like some additional content, just it won't be as extensive, and that content would still exist. And the goal would probably be to still give it to patrons a week early anyway. So, or unless it starts becoming about like, if we become a Marvel TV review show accidentally, which we're wanting to do, those are a little timely, so we might make that not a whole week early, but you'll get early access for sure. So let us know. That's probably the plan at the moment, unless y'all are really, really against it. But the plan is to still come up with cool stuff for y'all, and you'll get stuff early and everything like that. And any other content you might be interested in. That being said, 2 things happened over the weekend. One, both of them comic book related. One of them was Snyder related, and one of them was Winter Soldier related. Those were the 2 things. It was Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and his first episode aired, which I don't think we've actually talked about. And then the Snyder Cut, which you and me had like an hour-long conversation outside of a doctor's office waiting.
It was funny how like the Falcon and the Winter Soldier thing was midnight on Friday, and there was one day earlier was the Snyder Cut, but the Snyder Cut's 4 hours long, so I didn't get to finish the Snyder Cut until well after I had already watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier twice, talked about it, digested it, the whole deal.
Sure.
It took me like 5 or 6 sessions to finish Snyder Cut.
Yeah.
Because I was at home with my family, and like, so finally I finished it, and I overall loved it, but I also feel like it was weird that those 2 things happened at the same time. It's a rare occasion where I feel like Marvel and DC are clashing. And if the Snyder Cut had come out 2 days earlier, I think we would have been in much better shape. But the fact that they came out within 24 hours of each other was
or just a week
odd.
earlier. Like if it had fallen in that weekend where I didn't have Winter Soldier and I didn't have WandaVision, I had nothing to do.
Because I didn't watch the making of show. I mean, I want to, but I didn't watch it yet.
Well, and like that, I have time to watch on, right? It's not like I need to see what's like. I know there's no spoilers in the making of show. It's like, oh, they made the show was successfully made. You maybe find out stuff like the interview where you like that WandaVision was supposed to be a 10-episode series, but they had to cut an episode because of COVID, and they weren't able to film a lot of content, or the special effects weren't going to be able to be done, and so with those 2 things together, they had to cut out. That's why like. And we've talked about this before. That's why, like the main Quicksilver and what's her face Darcy and the twins like didn't do anything in the finale. It's because they had their entire section that wasn't relevant to like the plot, but was a cool action set piece cut out because they weren't able to film the other half of that episode that would have gone into that, alongside all the special effects from that being too intensive for the amount of time they had working in COVID environments. That's what you're going to find out in the making of. Cool. I also found that by being a person who follows people on Twitter that listen to Kevin Smith's podcast, Fat Man on Batman. It's good. If you want, I've heard good things. I've listened to a few. But back to Batman and Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier was good though. I really liked Winter Soldier. I thought it was like I think it's interesting that they didn't release more than 1 episode in that first day. I think a lot of people's complaints that I've seen are like, it was weird that it was like a super action packed Marvel thing in the beginning and then like slow character building and that didn't feel like it meshed, which I disagree with. But I guess, yeah, people like, I think actually the biggest complaint would be like, oh, this is just a Marvel movie, when like WandaVision was so weird and off the wall that like they didn't want that. And I think it's fine being both. I think it's fine having two shows that one is meant for being the aesthetic of Marvel and the other one isn't.
Well, I think it was pretty obvious from the get-go that Falcon and the Winter Soldier was going to resemble a lot closer to what we've seen in the MCU before, whereas WandaVision is a weird, trippy idea that obviously there's no MCU movie that looks like that or feels like that. I mean, if they started it out as an actual sitcom with only a couple little blurbs that weren't. So, it pretty much functioned like nothing they would ever be able to successfully make as a movie and release in a theater. I guess maybe now it would be different, but everything we've seen to this point, they wouldn't have been able to. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I actually thought the thing about the action was very interesting because I found, as cool as it was the part of the episode I cared about the least, because
Sure.
it seemed like it was just like as good as what I've seen in the movies, but the action sequences in the movies, unless there's something distinctly meaningful behind them, they're often the most boring parts. I mean, it can be cool to see like Thor hit people, but the best parts are like when when Steve's almost gonna die in Endgame and he gets the hammer. Like, it's matters. That's an emotional impact. The stakes are high, so it totally is awesome. But just like in general, people punching each other,
Yeah.
when you don't care about the people they're punching, is pretty boring.
I think it was long, which was definitely a comment that I don't disagree with. I think it's important in the framework of what this show is going to be that big action set piece happened at the beginning. Because obviously it's like a very strong reference to the opening scene to Winter Soldier, right? Like that's it's almost exactly that scene to Winter Soldier, to the extent that I was like,
is back, right?
yeah, it's like the same guy, right? Okay. I like wasn't sure that was Batroc, but I was like, it's Batroc the Leaper, right? So like it's even a reference to that. But I think the importance of it is, especially to like hammer home the ending of this episode of like, oh, they chose someone else to be Captain America over him, and that's messed up, is that scene establishes that he could do the job. Right? Like he like, because he doesn't have superpowers, right? He doesn't have a superhero syndrome. He is just that dope. And they establish in that scene that he is as capable, or capable in different ways than as capable but in different ways as Steve Rogers was. And so I think it's important to establish that, to have that ending be like, oh no, that's fucked up. Like,
Right.
how dare they give that shield to anyone else when Steve chose this guy, and you're using this guy at a level that you were using Steve before, and he's being successful at it. He successfully pulled a thing off that Steve could not have done. Steve could not have done that chase scene in the first scene. Different power suite, right? Like Iron Man could have done it, but Iron Man wouldn't have listened to you because you can't pay him enough. Which is
Right.
also fucked
Yeah,
up because Steve's not getting, because Sam's not getting paid anything.
It's kind of crazy. I did think that it was a cool action scene, and I think having it in the episode was important. And I think your point actually is really sound. They had to establish that he could do the job. I hadn't really thought about that it's the same villain, so that's why that happens as the bookend. I just probably would have pulled the big action scene maybe back to 15 minutes or so into the show. So I felt like I had, but I get it. I mean, I understand why they did it. I just, for some weird reason, it took me until a second viewing to appreciate it a little bit more. I thought it was cool the first time. It just didn't grab me. But that's just me.
Yeah.
On the whole, I thought the episode was pretty awesome. I think the stuff with Bucky, the stuff with his potential love interest from the bar, the stuff with Yuri, the older gentleman, all that stuff is really, really cool. I really like the Sam stuff with the bank loan. Like, I thought that stuff was interesting. It was like some of the best actual range I've seen from Anthony Mackie so far. And it's just proof. Like, right, if you think about like what Marvel has done with the streaming series, they just own our goodwill, because they literally gave you a pilot episode last time of Avengers in I Love Lucy, and then they jumped forward and they gave us Falcon getting a bank loan and Bucky on a date. And we
I feel like it's more
ate
than
it
that.
up.
Like I think it's Bucky dealing with metaphorically the same experiences that communities have in the US in regards to being a veteran, being African American, being both of those things, and how like the US government, being an athlete, how the US government is able to be like, "Oh, you're famous, but we don't really give a fuck about you. We're swearing
Yeah.
on the pre-show." And then Bucky dealing with PTSD, right? Like, what's cool is that both of these characters are veterans, and like that was kind of Sam and Steve's relationship began there, right? Like, Sam started the show as a veteran counseling person. That's where he was introduced to us as watchers in The Winter Soldier. Later, did we find out that he was a veteran counseling person that was previously a pilot, para-rescue superhero. But like, there is a level of like really cool, like, deep dive into stuff that like Marvel movies normally don't have the time to do. And then I did think of one more before we jump over to the Snyder Cut really quick, is the I do think the other point of the beginning scene was to prove that these shows can do this. Like, in some ways, both of these TV shows are the MCU kind of saying, no, these are movie level TV shows. We put the money into this show to make them.
They spent $200 million on making Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I think.
Right, which is a movie budget. That's how much. That's how much you spend on a movie. So that, I think, is also part of it. Is not only is that scene establishing he can do it contextually within the story, but meta contextually outside of the story for the watcher. That's saying these are going to have the action that you're expecting from any Marvel movie, but as a TV show. And the other thing is, like, these are eventually meant to be watched all at once in 10 episodes, right? Like, the week-to-week model. Shows are often no longer being written for that. So when we have 3 episodes, the fact that this was this long isn't going to contextually be that weird. It's not like WandaVision, right, where like WandaVision doesn't work unless you kind of do it week to week for the first 5 episodes, because you need the like mystery building conversation, and you need the feeling that you're watching a sitcom week to week, and you're like going to the water cooler to the office and talking about, oh, what did they do on Malcolm in the Middle this weekend? And that's what they both give you. I'm excited. I think I'm really excited by the future of Marvel TV. Surprisingly, I'm also excited by the future of DCEU entertainment for the first time maybe ever.
But what's so weird about the DCEU one is that, like, they're not going to... I don't think they're going to give us what we want.
You don't think we're going to get Snyder Justice League 2? You don't think...
I don't think so. Not after didn't like the WB didn't what's her name, Susan something, came out yesterday and said they will not be continuing the Snyder universe, just outright.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. I mean, that's also,
they weren't going to do this, right? But fans demanded it, so they did it. I know there's like a hashtag now that's like restore the Snyderverse. I just also think, like, okay, this is my honest opinion. I really loved the Snyder Cut. I thought it was excellent. I thought they did an incredible job with it. And I thought that it was 45 minutes too long, but I didn't care. I was all in. I was ready to watch it. It had so many moments that I loved. I loved all of the, like, I thought everybody was better in this movie than in the first version, right? But my expectations were also like so ready to be low.
Yeah,
they
true.
weren't low, but they were so ready to just assume this was not going to be good, that I was totally impressed with a movie that I can admittedly say was 45 minutes too long. I still really liked this movie that was 45 minutes too long. If you go in because this was good, expecting to get a good movie next time, like, Zack Snyder's movies aren't really good. They're just, a couple are good and mostly are terrible or a little above average.
Yeah. I think, I mean, my one comment has been, it's surprising how good Zack Snyder is at character development when you give him enough time to have both character development and a slow-mo movie, because in a regular Zack Snyder movie that can't be longer than 3 hours, and that's pushing it, he has to spend at least 50% of that movie in slow motion, which means that he doesn't have enough movie to develop his characters. But when you give him 5 hours, he has the 2-hour movie he needs to develop his characters and the 2-hour slow-mo movie, and so you get a whole movie. Every character was extremely well developed in this movie to an extent that that's, I think, the thing I walked about most, and that's the thing I think I would be the most sad about in not getting sequels to this, right? I actually kind of care about
all these characters now, right?
All these characters.
Cyborg and Flash.
I want a Cyborg movie really badly. That's, I think, I guess if I was God of WB, if I was in charge of WB and I had a choice, I would maybe let Zack Snyder, I would try and convince Zack Snyder to do miniseries Justice Leagues on HBO
So he could
Max.
do so that he could sort of do like a Flash like 5 episode miniseries kind of a thing where you get like lots of Ezra Miller, and then you learn to love him, and then all the characters. So that if they do end up doing a Justice League 2, not a Snyder Justice League 2, but a Justice League 2, we would love the characters and like root for them in some way.
No, I mean, HBO Max is in a position where they want to be Disney Plus, but from the Warner Brothers side, right? They want to be AT&T, HBO Max, or Disney Plus, and so they could very easily just invest in a Zack Snyder miniseries universe where he comes out with the next 3 hour long or 4 hour long, 4 episode long. Because this was a 5 episode TV show that they just didn't allow them to release in separate pieces because Zack Snyder had that much power here. But like, why couldn't they just do Justice League 2 as a miniseries on HBO Max that they spend $200 million on that's meant to compete with Disney Plus level content? Like, speaking of the Winter
Yeah,
Soldier, right? Like, and like they can still do the Batman with that has nothing to do with the Snyderverse, and the hopeful Mr. Freeze movie that I'm hoping on as the next
there's
Joker.
just some weird stuff with like Marvel shouldn't have worked, right? Like it shouldn't have worked based on everything that we've seen in movies over
Sure.
years. This was the first time that somebody had done this correctly. And Feige and the team pulled off some sort of miracle machine that kind of got us across the finish line some time ago. Like I wouldn't even go as far as to say that like Avengers was when we were across the finish line. I think Avengers was like the proof of concept to actually keep the thing going.
I think Winter
I
Soldier did it.
think
Or
yeah.
Guardians of the Galaxy. That summer did it, right? It was Guardians of the Galaxy and Winter Soldier both came out within 6 months of each other, and they were like so tonally different while having the same tone. Like focusing one on a character that like no one knew about. No one ever heard of Groot or Star Lord or any of those characters, and then another one that took a character that like kind of people were not that big of fans of the first Avenger when it came out. It was like, this is decent, but like who cares? And Captain America's weird because it's like America, and that's a concept that's weird. And but like Captain America 2 Winter Soldier, we were like, I'm in and all these people forever. I'll die for Chris Pine or Chris
I
Evans.
think yeah. I think you're probably dead on. It was either 2014 or it was 14 or 17, I think. It was 14 was the moment, I guess, when we crossed the finish line to like, you guys can keep doing this and I will see all the movies. That's probably when it was 2014. But the thing is, once they earned that, it means that we will accept the bad movies and not throw shade at the MCU. And they have goodwill enough to make 2 bad movies in a row, right? Like there's a brand there that's strong enough. It's like Pixar, where you just sort of like, okay, even if it's subpar, I don't care. I'm there for the next one.
Right.
DC hasn't crossed that finish line with anything they've done yet. Wonder Woman's close because Wonder Woman's good, but Wonder Woman's just a good movie. It's not a good movie in the context of something greater.
Mm-hmm.
Shazam is a good movie, but not in the context of something greater. Joker is a great movie, but it's also totally disconnected. So like they haven't figured out the thing yet. Where like for instance, if they had figured out the thing that was, we are going to put out really, really good standalone movies that aren't connected to our universe, and then we're going to put out, like kind of relatively less frequent installments to this DCEU thing, and hopefully we can be 1-to-1 good. But our casting is great. Like if that was kind of how we perceived it, it would be one thing, but they haven't earned it yet because there hasn't been very many good movies.
I'm a fan of what I would like DC to do is just release movies that have nothing to do with each other. I think we don't need more Marvels. I don't need that many extended universes to exist. I don't need more than one, to be honest. Even Star Wars is like pushing my limit. So like MCU is just what it is. It can be one. You don't need competing spaces for it. It's doing it well enough. We have enough. DC can release a bunch of superhero movies. I think we have more space for superhero movies, especially because the Marvel movies can't do weird things. They can't do a Joker. They can't do universe breaking content because it has to all be connected. So let DC do that. And then on HBO Max, don't do a DC universe. Just have a sequel of TV, like make it a TV show, like miniseries that are just continuous and connected, that are just high quality DC TV, which arguably DC has always been better at anyways. Like if you look at Marvel TV historically and DC TV historically, DC TV kicks butt. Like first season of Arrow is good, Flash first season is good, but like even like the Batman animated series, Teen Titans, all the Bruce Timm stuff, Justice League, Batman Beyond, like all of that era is amazing. even like Smallville, like I can't
People love Smallville.
like I'm not saying Smallville is good. It is a CW show from the mid 2000s, early 90s, and it is exactly what you expect that to be. But like they've just consistently had good TV content. Gotham, Lois and Clark back in the like early 90s, like it's just something that DC has always done well. And Disney hasn't been like this is the first time, right? There's been a limited amount of Marvel TV shows, and most even like the cartoon X-Men show isn't good. It's not as good as the Batman one by like a wide margin. So like I don't know. Yeah, I think they could do a. I think that's what I would want. I think I would want Zack Snyder to get to be able to make Justice League 2, but have it be released in the exact same format this movie was released.
A 4-hour epic series thing that he just does.
That he just
give
gets
him-
to do. Here's
And they-
250 million. Don't not as much money. Like don't give him the $500 million, but like here's a $200 million budget. Make Justice League 2. You can do whatever you want. You have to stay within that budget, and you have the actors that you've established as long as you can convince them to come back on. And like, especially because from reports, people like him to work with him. It's not like he doesn't have the same baggage that obviously Joss Whedon has, right? Like it's not like
Yeah.
like all accounts are that Zack Snyder is a good guy and people like working for him. It's one of the reasons I think he gets to make these movies so often. Is like
It's like a really hilarious part of this whole thing that Joss Whedon was hailed as like the genius that made Avengers for Marvel, and like that was the cred he got as like this giant movie maker. And then DC hired him to make their Avengers, and he's the guy who blew it, and then his career like basically ended. It's like sort of like bizarrely like like of course DC would get the bad version of Joss Whedon. Like it's just kind of like funny, I guess.
yeah, I think Joss Whedon is good at casting. Is like a thing that I think some people are really good at, but bad at being a. I don't know. I don't know how that happened. I don't know what happened to the guy. He's like obviously been problematic for a long time, so I don't have a lot to say to really delve deep into like how Avengers ended up being so good. But like Avengers 2 wasn't, right? Like it's not like Joss Whedon wasn't responsible for the worst Avengers movie. And,
I'll tell you how Avengers ended up being good.
Possibly the worst.
Kevin freaking Feige.
Sure, and then
how.
2 was Ike Perlmutter with Joss. Like one is Kevin Feige and Joss Whedon, and 2 is Joss Whedon and Ike Perlmutter, and that's the difference between the two franchises.
Is that true? So Ike was not involved in one, but he was involved in two?
He was involved with one for sure, but I don't think they had this. He didn't have the same ego, I think, is the difference. That like going into 2, that's why 2 and Thor: The Dark World, like that's why he got kicked out, right? Like Kevin Feige went to the studio and was like, I'm not, like Perlmutter can't be involved. In fact, the reason that the Netflix series and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and all of that is not included in the MCU anymore is because Ike Perlmutter was who was in charge of that content, and then Kevin Feige with the Disney Plus shows was able to say, no, I control all of this, right? Like that's the difference. If you want to know why those aren't canon and these are, it's Ike Perlmutter being an asshole.
It's such a weird like exclusivity thing, but like it's just, I mean, it's one of the most important brands in the world, the MCU. It's like worth so much money and so successful, and it has been regulated, 75%, like incredibly. Like there's like, it's probably got about a 25% miss rate, I would say, across the board. Like there's like 25% of the movies and projects that are like not the best, like Ultron sucks or it's not very good. A lot of the sequels are like Guardians 2 is pretty sweet, but it's not like, well, actually it's pretty good. Thor sucks.
I would say
Thor
25.
Dark World sucks.
25%
Iron Man
is
2 sucks.
Yes, they're bad, but they're not like the worst MCU movie is is like better than 75% of DC movies. It's better than 50% of X-Men movies. It's better than all of the like mid 2000 superhero movies other than Spider-Man 1, 2, X-Men 1 and 2, and that's it. Right? Like,
yeah, I guess that's a pretty fair point. Like those you watch some of those movies and it's like actually kind of astounding that they are movies that exist and were made. I watched Daredevil for the first time. I'd never seen it, like 2 weeks ago.
Oh wow. Okay.
And I paid for the director's cut because I had heard it was better.
Okay.
Right? And you can't rent it, so it's $15. I bought Daredevil the director's cut.
Okay.
And I watched that movie, and it is one of the worst experiences watching a movie you can have ever in the world. That movie is so atrocious. And I realize you guys are like, yeah, bro, you're like 18 years late to the party. But like when he's in the playground with Electra and they're gonna fight, and he like puts his cane up behind him, and it's just like that is insane. It's crazy how bad that movie is.
Yeah. Like,
But
well,
Colin Farrell as Bullseye, totally sweet.
and like that movie's better than the Elektra movie and Catwoman, and like arguably maybe like comparable to the Superman movie that came out in that era. Like there's a lot of bad trash superhero content, and like Thor 1 is better than all of those movies. And if that's the worst MCU movie, it's better than all of those movies. So like MCU's
Fair.
25% bad movies are generically decent compared to superhero movies, and that doesn't even get into like bad movies that aren't like don't have money behind them, right? So like I don't know. Yeah, it's fine. What I like about what I hope DC does is I hope DC takes the attitude of like, you know what? This is what Marvel movies are doing. What can we do differently? And I don't want them to say, "Oh, they're fun. Let's be not fun." I want them to say, because that's what Batman vs Superman did. And I think this Justice League movie is better than Batman. This was also better than Batman vs Superman, right? Like that's an easy statement I can make.
I feel like the Ultimate Edition of BVS is about as good as the Snyder Cut. They're pretty close. They're like
I like there's things are there was nothing in this movie where it's like this is dumb. Like the decisions characters are making don't make sense was not a thing I got watching the Snyder Cut. I think there's like things that did need to happen and it's slow-mo, but like in Batman vs Superman, there's not a single decision a character makes that makes sense other than the fact that you know that this movie was made to have Batman and Superman fight, and that's all. That's why it exists.
yeah, and I guess like to some but here's the question. If Snyder got a chance to recut BVS and he reshot it, like they were like, here's 70 million to reshoot, re-edit, recut your movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much positive he finds a way to make Martha not happen. And if Martha doesn't happen in that movie, then that movie is 40% better. It almost single-handedly ruins the movie.
Jesse Eisenberg as well. I agree, but I think both of those things are bad.
That's fair.
I guess my thought is that movie has Justice League is the natural outcome of the superhero universe of DC, right? Like the Justice League makes sense. Oh, there are a bunch of heroes in this world. What are they likely to do when something big happens? Team up. Oh, this worked out. Cool. Let's keep this. Let's make this a thing. Let's keep teaming up. That makes sense. That's how everything works out. That's even have like corporations in the real world exist that way. It's like, oh, we're all media companies. Let's all just combine into Viacom.
Right.
Like you amalgamate stuff. That's how we're pack animals. So Batman versus Superman, though, doesn't make sense and only is interesting because people in high school on schoolyards or like in middle school like arguing who's going to beat up the other one. Like you have to come up with very weird reasons for Batman and Superman to fight each other, and they did it because it had never been done before, and Batman movies have existed for 50 years and so has Superman movies, but like there's no reason for those characters to fight each other. It goes against most of what those characters believe in. So the reason Justice League I think works where Batman vs Superman didn't, with all of Snyder's Snyderiness abound, is that one action doesn't make sense for it to happen without weird leaps of faith, and the other one is the natural state of the universe just happening. Bad guy exists. How do we stop it? He's stronger than every one of us. Okay, let's team up. Oh, this isn't even working. Okay, well, what's our next bet? Let's resurrect Superman. Cool. That worked. Oh, we won. Cool. Great. Movie. Yeah.
So I think that concludes our initial movie podcast for the week. And if you guys enjoyed this is some shenanigans that you'd want to see more often. I guess let us know in the comments. Let us know what you think below.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
If you want more movie content, do you want Ben for me to stop recording and start recording so that we can grab this separately? I don't know how to do that for the stream. I have to do editing. You're gonna make me edit this, aren't you? This is messed up. I feel betrayed by you. All right, we'll see how that works. All right.